A monumental global energy transition is underway. The powerhouses of the global economy are aligning on climate, bringing a unified ambition, vision, and diplomatic weight to the COP26 table. We see that the transition to 100% renewable energy system is set to accelerate at an eye-popping rate. It is no longer a question of if we will make the journey, but when we will arrive at a decarbonized future. My name is Sushil Purohit, and I'm leading the technology company Wärtsilä's energy business. At Wärtsilä, we envision a 100% renewable energy future, and today I'm here to present you our front-loading net zero analysis, where we have modeled how 6 different countries could achieve net zero in a very near future in an economically achievable way. The eyes of the world are now on the energy sector. Global leaders now expect power producers to deliver the lion's share of emission cuts that are so vital for meeting national decarbonization goals. Investment still remains a key hurdle, especially in the post-COVID world. The International Energy Agency calculates that the investment in clean electricity must leap from 380 billion to 1.6 trillion by 2030 to put us on a path to net zero by 2050. As a result, oncoming incentives and regulations are set to ensure that clean power is always the most attractive option. Utility leaders now have 2 key questions. Will my business survive and thrive in a transformed energy market fueled by renewable energy? And can the energy sector decarbonize in the timeline needed to avert a far greater crisis than COVID-19, climate breakdown? The urgency of the climate crisis demands that power sector pioneers the rapid decarbonization of economies worldwide. Moreover, our Wärtsilä modeling on energy system in both advanced and developing economies, from California in the United States to India, supports the inarguable economic case for utilities to lead the transition rather than by being shaped by it. Countries must now front-load the transition towards net zero, taking major steps in next 5 to 8 years to tackle the climate crisis. We don't have to wait endlessly for the new technology. The technology we need for net zero already exists. We just need clear transition planning to ensure investment flows to the right places at the right time. Critically, it is not just economics that is driving the energy transition. Our leaders attending COP26 must be prepared to pledge commitments that are generous enough to avert global climate breakdown. Today's global targets for 2030 are nowhere near enough to meet the Paris target. United Nations just made it clear. Globally, we must halve emissions over next decade alone. It is the job of every power company to now put strategies and capital in place to navigate to net zero and embed flexibility at the heart of grids to unlock 100% renewable energy systems. As we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, we can lay the foundation for a smoother transition to a decarbonized world. To illustrate the measures needed for cost-optimal path to 100% renewable energy, we have modeled in our front-loading net zero report the energy transition in 6 countries. Let us have a quick look at countries and possible path towards a net zero future. California, a global transition pioneer on a legally binding trajectory to build a 100% renewable energy system by 2045, California must rapidly accelerate its adoption of wind, solar, and unlock significant savings, both in terms of energy cost and CO2 output. India, an economy that on an astonishing growth trajectory. India must align its net zero ambition with its rapidly rising demand for energy, while ensuring that the coal no longer enters the power systems. Germany, a country with world-leading experience of scaling up renewables and ambitious climate targets, Germany now faces a monumental challenge to phase out coal by 2030 before fully decarbonizing, setting a blueprint for coal phase out in countries worldwide. Our modeling shows how Germany could decarbonize by 2040, 5 years ahead of country's net zero target. Australia, a potential renewable superpower. Australia has for the first time reached a consensus on its pathway to net zero. But to progress and secure clean future, fossil fuel powered baseload capacity must be left behind. Chile, an emerging leader in clean power production, Chile must capitalize on its enviable renewable power capacity factor while accelerating its coal phase out. UK, as the COP26 host, the United Kingdom has set a world leading target for a net zero power system by 2035. But to realize its ambition, it must double down on wind and flexibility this decade. So, even though these countries have different socioeconomic dynamics, energy systems, and challenges to overcome, they all have one thing in common: the commitment and need to accelerate their transformation even faster. Our country level analysis clearly shows that decarbonization and the transition from fossil based system to 100% renewable electricity, it is not just possible, it is technically and commercially feasible with technologies that are already available today. And these technologies include wind and solar, short duration battery energy storage, flexible thermal balancing power plants to provide firm and dispatchable capacity, sustainable fuels such as hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels to be used in thermal balancing power plants which is going to provide long-term energy storage. As I told you before, we don't have to endlessly wait for new technology. We can start to transform with the technology available today. The feasibility of green transition shown in the report should act as a wake-up call for leaders, especially the ones gathering at COP26 at this pivotal moment, and to prioritize the building of net zero power systems today. This summer's flood, fires, and extreme heat are reminders that climate crisis is a global issue that is rapidly worsening. However, clear potential to address the crisis shown in the IPCC latest report provides us some hope. And if we can act now, we can halt and even reverse some of the damages. Now is a key moment to set clear frameworks for achieving net zero. For most, it is not about starting from the scratch, but understanding where and how to invest to drive future resilience and profit. No matter the region, the report demonstrates that shifting rapidly to 100% renewable energy system brings benefit to the society, both economically and in terms of climate. It is vital to understand that the energy transition will not increase the cost of electricity in comparison to what it is today. The transition provides a unique opportunity to transform their business and relevance for the power sector, placing abundant clean power at the center of world's recovery from the global pandemic. So, what should countries do to build their energy transition path? Based on our modeling and on the ground experience, the ingredients in the recipe are similar everywhere. Build conditions that enable additions of renewable electricity sources as quickly as possible. Then build conditions that will enable investment in energy storage and thermal balancing power plants, plants that can start up and shut down as needed to balance renewable energy output efficiently. Once there is sufficient renewable output, countries should retire legacy inflexible power plants, such as coal. To reach 100% share of renewable power, leaders must create the conditions to build power to X capacity for sustainable fuel productions and convert thermal balancing power plants to run on that fuel. And lastly, if not already retired, the last remaining fossil fuel capacity can then be rapidly phased out. So now, to conclude, let me remind you that the climate crisis is a global issue that is rapidly worsening. If we act now, we can halt and even reverse some of the damages. And we can do this with the technologies that is currently available. But the most important takeaway is to start now. Our very future depends on it. Let's achieve net zero together. And now I have the privilege to be joined by Mr. Christian Breyer, professor at the Lappeenranta Lahti University, to discuss renewable energy technologies and look at how countries can and should front load net zero. Now I have the privilege to be joined by Mr. Christian Breyer, professor at the Lappeenranta Lahti University, to discuss renewable energy technologies and look at how can and should countries front load their net zero. Welcome, Christian.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Hello.
Great. At Lappeenranta Lahti University, you have been studying how to achieve carbon neutrality. What would you say are the future building blocks based on your researches?
I would say, first of all, it's absolutely necessary that we have clear policy targets and the execution to reach a zero emission system. Without that, the rest will not follow. However, given that, we need low-cost renewable electricity as the central building block. It will be mainly photovoltaic, also wind energy, and then supported by hydropower where still available. And then we get system flexibility. It can be dispatchable plants, it can be strong grids or have to be strong grids, sector coupling, storage, and finally green hydrogen to what else applications for the not electrifiable demands. All this together will lead to a zero emission system.
Thank you. I have another question. Wärtsilä and Lappeenranta Lahti University have worked on India modeling in this report together. And there are lots of fascinating findings. What can the world learn from these findings?
I would say, to put everything in a nutshell, for countries, it's possible to go for leapfrogging. One has not to repeat the failures of other countries. One can directly start with the full industrialization, electrification, demand growth on a fully sustainable basis, and avoid a coal pathway with a lock-in effect that would be very dangerous. That would lead finally that the power system cost will even go down. And the fundamental reason is that solar electricity is nowadays so low cost, and it will be supported also by low cost batteries, that the traditional fossil pathway is simply the more expensive one.
Thank you, Christian, and thanks for sharing this with us. And thank you all for listening. Please stay with us for the next session, which is going to be starting shortly.